There's a story that the Jungian writer writes so well, Robert Johnson, tells in this very fine book on same-sex love that just came out. Some friends wrote. He said he went to India, and people warned him in his first trip, Robert, you've got to steel yourself before you get there, or it will just sweep you off your feet. You're going to be stepping over dead corpses in the street. There'll be lepers after you, people with amputated legs poking into your ribs. You'll watch people starving before your eyes. And all of that turned out to be true, he said, and yet I survived. I had some bad moments, but somehow my sense of reality expanded to take in this dimension of life. But what no one prepared me for was the immense deep happiness of so many people in India, people who had no reason to be happy. Some of them are starving to death on the edge of disaster, living for all intents on the streets, outdoors, with no idea where their food will be coming from. But they're happy people with nothing to be happy about. I found out that you're not ever happy about anything. You're just happy. Happy and happening are the same word in the dictionary. So if you want to make friends with an Indian, he goes on talking about being there, you don't talk to them or look at them directly, you just kind of edge up next to them. Usually it has to be someone of the same sex. And wait. And if he consents to something with you, he won't go anywhere. He'll just stand there or sit there, and after what seems like a terribly long period of time, then somebody says something or somebody does something, and then you two are probably friends for as long as you wish or intend, likely for life. And this is not taken lightly. For example, one day I was riding my bicycle, minding my own business, though nothing is ever entirely one's own business in India, when a young fellow came along parallel to me. In good Anglo-Saxon style, I moved over slightly and dutifully looking straight ahead. The young fellow remained parallel to me, so I moved over a little farther, but he was still there. He moved closer. Presently, he reached out, took my hand, and we proceeded for several blocks riding together hand in hand. Then he turned off at the next street, and I never saw him again, at least not for a while. But the connection was engaged, and a bond was made that is the genius of India. And if I ever saw him again, he would have been my true friend. One further story. I didn't know my way around that wonderful world of India, but I ended up making friends amazingly quickly anyway. Then I got sick, nothing permanent, mind you, but very sick. I was in an Indian hospital, which is another word for nightmare. They explained it to me. It was supposed to be truly modern, westernized. They had one thermometer, which all of us patients had in succession, one after another. I objected, and they said, it's all right because we rinse it off each time under the tap. Somehow, we all survived. The point of this story was that my first Indian friend, who'd taken me on as a blood brother, for what reason I'll never know, it's futile to ask, came and slept under my bed at night. He said, I'm not going to leave you there alone. So he, or someone assigned by him, slept under my hospital bed every night I was there, which is common in India. Now, if I go to the hospital in America, I can't get anybody to sleep under my bed. It's not possible. One day when my fever was 104 and I was just slightly out of my head, Amba Shankar, which was his name, stood at the foot of my bed and told me a story of his friend Baba. Baba had another friend, and this friend was ill. It looked as if Baba's friend might die. So Baba came to his friend and said, I wish to die for you, and you have only to say the word and I will go and die that you may live. This is my wish, this is my friendship, this is how it is. The friend agreed, so Baba went away and died, and the friend lived. Being told this story, which is something like out of the Arabian Nights, snapped me into focus because Amba Shankar then said, you say the word and I will go die and then you will be all right. I was utterly speechless. I don't understand things like this. My heart understood and resonates, but none of my Anglo-Saxon verbal Western mind could cope with it. So I managed to say, Amba, I do not think I'm that ill. Don't do anything now, please. I think we will both pull through. And as it happens, we did. But the man had offered me an astonishing gift, his own life. In Zorba the Greek, Zorba's walking along and he runs into a 90-year-old man, 95-year-old, who's digging in the earth and planting this almond tree that won't bear fruit for 20 or 30 years. And he says, "Old man, how can you plant that tree? You know, you're 95 years old, you won't see it bear fruit." And the old man looked at him and said, "I act," he said, "and I live as if my life has no end." And Zorba then turned to his friend. He said, "And I said, boss, I act as if every day was my last. Which is the right way?" I have an acquaintance who was telling me about an old man he knows who's so sensitive to impermanence, he won't buy green bananas. Not sure, you know. As if holding on makes a difference. Now, in the great story or myth of the night of the Buddha's enlightenment, he sat under the Bodhi tree and stilled himself and opened his consciousness and his mind so broadly and so deeply, with such clarity. In the first 2 watches of the night, he looked at the very nature of life. And as his mind became luminous and clear, and all time appeared, which it does when you become absolutely still, the past and the present and the future are always just here. He looked into the nature of time. And he said, "I saw my past lives, 1, 2, 5, 10, 100, 1,000. Now, you don't have to believe in past lives to meditate. You can just do it in this life. It's fine. There's no need to believe in all of that stuff. It's true, but you don't have to believe it, right? But anyway, so he looked. And there he said, I was born in such and such a place and made certain karma and then was reborn in this other life again and again and again, 10,000 times. And then as his meditation deepened, he turned his consciousness to see the life of many beings and saw beings in all forms and sorts being born from one life or one existence to another in the cycles of great hundreds of thousands of kalpas of time. Each being the father or mother or sister or brother to another over and over again. The world cycles, 100,000 mahakalpas. Saw those who had short lives and long lives. Saw the beings that lived simply and those who lived complexly. Huston Smith, who was a wonderful teacher and friend, when he met with the Dalai Lama in exile in India in the early years, he was still a professor at MIT. So the Dalai Lama, interested in science, said, "Tell me, Huston, what is the latest scientific view on the beginnings of the universe?" And so Huston, coming from MIT, explained the whole thing of the Big Bang. The Dalai Lama was very interested. And then Huston said, "Do you have anything in Buddhism that is the equivalent of the Big Bang?" The Dalai Lama reflected for a bit and he said, "I think more accurately in the Buddhist tradition, we would call it the bang, bang, bang theory of the universe. That as the Buddha looked, he saw whole universes appear for vast eons of time and then disappear. And there were earths and planets of all kinds and beings of every form, and then they would vanish. And again, out of nothing would come new universes." Now, maybe you can't see that far, but you can see the change of seasons and notice the earth go around the sun, because that's what the change of seasons comes from. And you can see the change of civilizations. There's 28 or 30 or more in our history books, empires, the Sumerian Empire, the Babylonians, you remember cuneiform writing and all of that stuff, the Egyptians, the Chinese, the Persians, the Greeks, the Hittites, the Romans, the Ottoman Empire, the British Empire, remember that one? It was big, right? Until recently. Or the Portuguese Empire, the Dutch, or even the Russian Empire. Empires a dime a dozen. Remember Ozymandias? Yes. So that's the perspective that the Buddha had the night of enlightenment, looking at the arising and passing of vast stretches of time and beings doing the dance of our life. Now these days, especially in California, it's easy for spiritual practice to become confused with self-improvement. You know what I mean? It can either be what Alan Watts described as a grim duty, to make yourself better. You're the survivor or the perpetrator or the victim or the something, and we are survivors or we are addicts or all these things. But one can make that so much an identity that you lose a sense of something greater. Or you come with some limited sense of yourself, the problems of your body, the tasks you have to do, the stories you tell of your life, your fears, your hopes. And if you practice right, you'll become less neurotic or less greedy or more relaxed, or your personality will become more pleasant, or you'll be better at tennis or lovemaking or something. Or you'll just be a great spiritual human being, And of course it can help. Meditation or various things can do that. But in the ground of it, to sit or to enter a spiritual practice, to awaken, is not about self-improvement, but about opening to what is our true nature. To rest in that space of truth as the Buddha did in the midst of all of life under the Bodhi tree. That's not improvement, but rather it's letting go. Zhuang Su, old Taoist sage, he said, "A drunken man who falls out of a cart, though he may suffer, does not die. His bones are the same as other people's, but he meets his accident in a different way. His spirit is in a condition of security. He's not conscious of riding in the cart, neither is he conscious of falling out of it. Ideas of life, death, fear, and the like cannot penetrate his heart, his breast, and so he does not suffer from contact with so-called objective existence. If such security is to be gotten from wine, how much more can it be gotten from the divine?" It's not about improvement, but letting go. And as we learn to let go, there comes a sense of grace, of the seasons.